look at Excel here and apply it to our master budget, or an example of the beginning of a master budget here. There's a template which I've put here on the screen in front of you, and you have a copy of. It is applying Excel, Chapter 8. We have data, and we have input all the data that we will need for this problem, as you can see at the top. We're going to reference those cells. So if we ever have to change those cells, or change the numbers in those cells, the values in those cells, it will change all the answers down here in the problem itself. So if we have different budgeted sales, for example, in the first quarter here, we would change that number, and then of course all the numbers underneath here would change because we've referenced them in formulas. So let me show you how that's done. If you've got experience in Excel, this is going to be too simple for you, but if you don't, I need a little refresher, this would be a good example for you to get started with. So we're going to start with the first question here, which is construct the sales budget. And so we've got all our information put in up front. If you are starting a problem out of the textbook, of course, you're going to type all this information in. Everything up here is a given. It's in the problem itself. What we're looking for is to fill in these question marks with formulas, not with answers. So we never put an answer in here. We always use formulas. So the first one is constructing a sales budget. The budgeted unit sales, well, we go up here, the budgeted unit sales are right here. So we know that this is exactly what should be filled in here. But instead of changing it to type in 40,000, which we could, and end up with a number here, we're not going to do that. What we're going to do is change this cell to equals, and then we're going to click on cell B5, and then we know that the cell down here, which is now B26, will now be equal to B5, and it'll just fill in the value. So we just hit equals B5, and then we hit the enter key, and we have $40,000 there, or 40,000 units, excuse me. The next step is to decide if we're going to go across with that same number, and we're not, because the sales numbers changed. So there's no easy way to drag it out and make it faster. And then we're going to go down. Well, the selling price per unit, the selling price per unit is $8, and that's consistent across all the units, so we can drag that price. So here's how you drag a price. You go to selling price per unit, and you hit equals, and then you go up here to selling price per unit, and you get B7. But up here in the header, we can just click in there and add two things. You might not be familiar with this. If we add a $sign in front of the B and a $sign in front of the 7, that makes this a constant, so it won't move. And I'll show you an example of that in a second. But once we've got $B, $7 in there, we hit enter, and now the $8 is in the total unit sales price. We can look at the 40,000 units here in cell B26, and we can just take that little cursor in the lower right hand corner, and when it turns to a dark cross, we can just take it across, and it will copy the cells from above. So it just extends the trend, if you will, what's going on. So if you look up here at the top, it's equals B5, and then the next cell is equals C5, and so on. That saves you some time in typing things in or putting your formulas in. The reason we put $B and $7 is because we don't want it to copy the next cell, which would be C7. We want it to stick on a constant $8. So now when we drag the 8 across, it stays $8. So if you put the $sign in front of the B, it'll stay in the B column. If you put it in the $sign in front of the number, it'll stay in the 7 row. So you've got B column, 7 row, and it just stays there, and that's the constant that will be there. And if you click on any of the cells, you can see it's still equal to $B, $7, $B, $7, and so on. So that's an easy way to drag and fill in your spreadsheet. Now, total sales is a simple equation. Remember, we do not want to use numbers. We want to use formulas. So this formula is pretty straightforward. We're going to hit equals, and it's going to be sales, and we use the asterisk for the multiplication. It's not an X, it's an asterisk. Sales times the amount of price per unit, and we hit enter, and we get an answer of $320,000. And of course, this answer can be dragged as well, and we drag it across, and we get an answer for each one of the numbers that is simply looking at the other formula. So one of the things that you can do here to check your formula is to double click on the cell, and it'll show you which formula or which cells are involved in your formula. So in this case, it's B26 times B27. If I hit escape, I can get out of that, and then I go to C28 and I click on it, and you can see what the formula is looking at in the C column, and so on. So you can check your work that way. Now to we can also continue down on the other corner here, the other two columns. I'll let you do that and move our way down to construct a schedule of expected cash flows. So we go over here to the first cell, and it says beginning balance of accounts receivable. That sounds like something that would be given. Here it is, accounts receivable beginning balance 65,000. So we go down here, and we know that this equals B8. We hit enter, and that's the 65,000. And then first quarter sales, and we're looking for expected cash collections from first quarter sales. So we go up to here, sales collected in the quarter sales are made, 75%. So we're going to collect 75% of these sales that are made in this quarter in this cell. So this cell equals, and we have a constant up here that we're using, but we're not going to use it an awful lot. So we're going to go ahead and just use the number instead of putting a dollar sign in front of it. And then we're going to be, this is sales per quarter, 75% of what? 75% times the amount of sales we have. So, and then we hit enter, and so we have $240,000 worth of first quarter sales, which will be collected, and then the rest of it will be collected. It says up here that the rest is in the quarter after sales are made, so that's 25%. So in the next quarter, we will it will equal 25% times this quarter's sales, which is enter. And so we say the $320,000, we'll get 75% of it in this quarter and 25% of it in this quarter, and we can keep going through the rest of the quarters. Now, when we get to the totals down here at the bottom, we want to total this, total cash collections for the quarter. We want to use more than just an asterisk or a plus sign to get to the answer. So we want to use a formula that can be dragged easily and that works across all the different formats. So here we're going to use equals, and we're going to use a command called sum, S-U-M, and we're going to open the parentheses, and then we're going to drag all of the cells above it into the equation, end parentheses. So the formula is equals sum, S-U-M, parentheses, B32 colon B36, which you can see is entered, end parentheses, enter, and we get the total for this column from accounts receivable beginning to fourth quarter sales. Now, if you think about this, the reason we did that is so all we have to do is drag it across, and we get answers across this row. Now, as this gets filled in, every one of these answers will change. We can also do that across the row. So if we go over here to year and we hit equals, and now you know what it's going to be. It's sum, parentheses, and we drag across, and we hit end parentheses, enter, and we can see that we've added up all of the row here from 65,000 over, and if we double click on it, we can see what's included in that calculation. Again, once you've double clicked on it, the easy way to get out is just to hit escape. If you double click on it and start hitting other key buttons or other cells, it can get you out too, but it also can insert them in as if you wanted to add them. So the easy way, if you make a mistake like this, is just hit escape on your keyboard, and it'll take you out of it. So if you do end up double clicking on something and clicking somewhere else, you can get rid of it in easy fashion by just hitting the escape key. Okay, so now we have our cash collections. You can fill the rest of this in. You've got some totals here. We go to construct the production budget. It says budgeted unit sales. Budgeted unit sales is again back up here, budgeted unit sales. So we know what that is. That's equals B5, enter, and then we simply grab it as the little corner and we take it across, and we can see that there are our budgeted unit sales. Oh, we have an error here, don't we? See, this doesn't quite fit because they've inserted year here. Well, there is no year up here, so just dragging won't work. So what we need to do here is let's get rid of this. We hit delete, and we get rid of this. We hit delete. And so now these are missing still. We go over here to year 1, and of course it's easy to do. We just hit equals, and we go up to year 1, we get 70,000, enter. And now either we could drag it over, which we could do easily. You get 80,000, or we could just type in equals G5 to fill that in. This year cell here is simply the sum across this row. Now we know that the way to do that is to hit equals and do sum parentheses window in the row and end parentheses enter, and we have the yearly sales. Going down the column, we have 40,000 budgeted unit sales. We want our desired ending inventory. Should have given us some information here. Yes, desired ending inventory is 30% of the unit sales of the next quarter, and the finished goods inventory at the beginning was 12,000. So when we start looking at this down here, our desired ending inventory, we want 30%, that is this number up here, 30% times the next quarter. So this is going to equal the 30%, and that's times the next quarter, enter. And so this number, 18,000, is 30% of 60,000. Now, when you start thinking about this, you go, well, I want to drag it. How am I going to move it across? If I move it across like this, I'm going to get some problems here. And the reason for it is this B11 cell up here, if you click on the next value, you'll see what it's done. It's gone from B11 to C11. And if you hit escape and get out of that and go to the next cell, it's gone to D11. And so clearly we need to put some dollar signs in here. So we go back to the cell, and if we just put a dollar sign in front of the B and a dollar sign in front of the 11, enter. Now we have a formula we can drag, because the dollar sign 11, dollar sign B, dollar sign 11 will stay constant, yet the other row or other columns will adjust. So now we can drag it across and we get an answer. So there we go. Now this 75,000 here, this answer is based on 250 because we have the extra column in there. Now we don't want it to be based on 250, we want it to be based on the next quarter. So one of the ways you can move that once you're into it and have double clicked it is you just move your cursor until this turns to a little hand. See that little hand there? Now that little hand. Now you can just click on it and move it over. And that changes the formula. You hit enter and it'll stay there. Now we know that this is B11, which is the 30%, times G41, which is our next quarter sales, not the annual total that has been inserted in here. Again, escape gets us out of that. So I think you can go through the rest of it, beginning less beginning finished goods inventory. We looked at that earlier. Finished goods inventory beginning is 12,000. So you have this equals, don't type in the 12,000, type in up here the beginning finished inventory cell number, which is B12, and that's an enter. And so we're good with the B12, and of course you get down to the end. It's this minus this equals that. That's a pretty easy formula to put in. So you should be able to get through all those. Constructing raw materials budget. Constructing raw materials budgets. Well, we do the required production units. Well, where did we get the required production units? Right from above. We just figured it out. So this cell equals the result of B45. So we just hit enter, and so this cell is now B45. You can see it up here, even though there's no number in here. So when you start calculating these things, you can see how they cascade down. And then you've got raw materials to produce 1 unit in pounds. That's a given up here. I think at 5 pounds. Raw materials to produce 1 unit is 5 pounds. And so you can fill all these in and just adjust. Then you can go across and adjust. These are pretty straightforward calculations. And this is cash expected payments. Schedule of cash payments is different purchases over time, and we're going to purchase them over time at different rate, or pay for them at different rates. So you can see that you've got all the techniques here to fill this in, but you got to think through what's filling to how to fill it in, and use the techniques to make it simpler by dragging and putting in dollar signs to make constants. You know, the dollar sign is very easy to remember. If you drag this, it's going to remember what that dollar sign B, $7, whatever that cell is, and you drag it, it's going to stay on that cell. If you don't put the dollar signs in, it's going to follow you. So this 40,000, this references 60,000, C5. Excuse me, let me escape out of that. D references D5. So you can see it when I drug the unit sales over, it just followed it across. That's very handy in many circumstances, but in others you have constants. So if it's a constant, start thinking to yourself, do you want to put a dollar sign in front of it or not? So that'll be an insider tip, I guess, if you will, for what you do in Excel. So there's a couple things here just to remind you. One, put all of your information up front, right on top. Put it all listed here so you can reference it easily. Notice that all the text is in a different cell than the number itself. That's very important. In addition to that, when you put these numbers in, you don't want to put in 75 and then type in type in a percentage. The number itself is a percentage. So if I wanted 75%, 75% in decimals is 0.075, or sorry, 0.75. And if I hit enter, it turns into percent if it's in percentage. If I change that by hitting the little number up here to no specific format, it leaves it 0.075. So what I don't want to do is type in 75 and in a regular number. Let me type that in again here. So this is 75 is a regular number. This is formatted as a percentage. In this regular number, general, if I turn it into a percentage, either I can click on the little percentage here, or I can just go up here and say, I want it to be a percentage. I get 7,500%. Well, 7,500% is 75. Well, we don't want that. We want 75%. So you have to insert 0.75 as the decimal under percentage, and you get 75%. In addition to that, we really don't want too many extra zeros here. These two buttons here will increase the number of zeros or decrease them, and so you can use those to decrease the numbers. So I'm going to delete this, I'm going to delete this, I'm going to send you this template. You can see that this is already at 75% and set up its percentages. In addition to that, these are just numbers. These are not a problem at all, and these are currencies. So some are set up as currencies. Currencies will give you a dollar sign and the commas that you're looking for. So these are already set up. They will carry through here if you reference them. So that will be one thing you can count on that's already set up for you. But when you do your own spreadsheets, you need to consider what kind of units you're in here. Any other questions I will take in class? This should get you started. Just go through and fill in all these answers. The textbook has the correct number here. So what you're really working on is being able to set up formulas. There should be absolutely no number in any of this calculation. This should be all cell references. And if it's not just a cell reference, it should be a calculation. The only numbers that has been typed in are up here in the data. And therefore, if I change this 40,000 to 50,000, you can see that it changes this number, that changes this number, that changed this number, and this number, and so on. And if I undo it, and put 40,000 back in, all of these numbers changed again. The first quarter sales, collections have changed, the amount of sales has changed, the units of sales have changed. Everything changes all the way down the spreadsheet. That's what we're looking for, is to learn how to set up a spreadsheet. So if you change your second quarter sales at 80,000 or 80, which is even worse, right? And a really bad quarter, you can see that the numbers change automatically. And of course, you can put it back to 60,000 and it'll be fine. So I've given you a template here. What you're looking to do is fill in the formulas and think through what formulas and how things work. And the example is already in your book. And so there you go. If you have any questions, get a hold of me. I'm always available to you at any time. And thanks for watching.